Okay. Good afternoon. Good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome. My name is Casey Murphy, and I'm ACT's Director of Programs and Events. I want to thank you for joining us today for ACT's April webinar entitled Cause Marketing Giving Consumers a Higher Purpose. Today, it's sponsored by our friends at Agile Mile. Before we hear from our presenters this afternoon, I wanted to quickly take care of a few housekeeping items. First, all attendees are on mute during this webinar. If you have a question or have a problem hearing us, please type it in the chat box located in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Second, we will be hosting a Q&A at the end of this webinar, so please feel free to type in your questions as you go, but just please make note when typing in the question in the Q&A box located at the bottom of the toolbar of your screen there to please note who the question is for. Finally, this session is being recorded and we'll have the recording up within 24 hours after the webinar concludes. Now I'd like to go ahead and pass things over to David Strauss, ACT's Executive Director, to give an update on what ACT currently has going on. David?
Thank you, Casey. Good afternoon and welcome to all of you for joining us today. It's hard to believe that it's already been 2 weeks since our last webinar, but time sure flies when you're busy and having fun. And we've been doing both here at ACT these past few weeks as we continue to work on several new initiatives and look forward to some exciting activities and events in the weeks and months to follow. As the premier association for TDM professionals, ACT's goal is to build a strong community of individuals and organizations working to advance and implement TDM at their work sites and within their communities. Webinars like today's are an important benefit to you as a member of ACT, providing you with valuable information on the latest trends and important knowledge to make you more impactful in the work that you do. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment to update everyone on some news from the organization. As we announced at the last webinar, we're excited to have Representative Chuy Garcia as our new champion and lead sponsor of ACT's More Through TDM Act. Rep. Garcia has officially introduced an updated version of the legislation and issued a Dear Colleague letter to the full House of Representatives, seeking original co-sponsors for the bill. It's been wonderful to see so many members responding to our call for action and reaching out to their local members of Congress to encourage them to support the legislation. These efforts are very impactful and have already led to new co-sponsors and some great meetings to discuss the importance of TDM. On Monday, ACT will be hosting two 30-minute informational sessions for ACT members to learn more about the legislation and what it will do for TDM across the country and your programs, including $1.25 billion in new funding for TDM programs across the country. The session will provide you with tools and tips on how to advocate and educate your members of Congress. I encourage all of you to sign up for one of the sessions on the website. ACT's Future of Commuting Summit is now just a few weeks away. The event will bring together hundreds of TDM professionals, probably many of you that are on the call today, for an afternoon of panels and interactive small group discussions. The event will explore important topics around the evolving challenges that face commuters, the importance of rethinking our planning strategies, and the necessity to focus on creating equitable transportation systems for all people. Also, just a friendly reminder that tomorrow is the deadline for nominations for ACT's National TDM Awards that will be presented during the 35th Annual International Conference this summer in Disney World. Don't forget, early bird rates for the conference actually end at the end of this month, so be sure to register now and secure your discounted rate. To all the non-members that are joining us today on the call, I welcome you and hope that you will give serious thought to joining the association and becoming a member of our great community of TDM professionals. There's tremendous value that you receive when coming together within the largest association for TDM. After today's event, you'll receive a note from Elizabeth Denton, our Membership Experience Manager, offering an opportunity to connect and learn more about membership in ACT. Now on to today's webinar, Cause Marketing, Giving Consumers a Higher Purpose, which is sponsored by our friends at Agile Mile, who've been longtime sponsors and supporters of ACT. Having known Rick for many years, I know this is a topic and a philosophy that is core to the work that he does, and a topic that I'm looking forward to learning more about today from our speakers, who will provide an overview of cause marketing, its use in well-known consumer brands, and how TDM programs can put the power of appealing to a consumer's or a commuter's, well, I guess both, sense of purpose and desire to be a part of something bigger than themselves to create positive change. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speakers. We have Dan Currier, who's the Public Transit Coordinator and Program Manager for Go Vermont, the statewide resource for finding greener travel options, tracking greener trips, and earning rewards. Prior to joining the Vermont Agency of Transportation in January of 2020, Dan was the Transportation Program Manager and GIS Manager at the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. Dan holds a bachelor's degree in GIS mapping from Linden State College. We have Lauren Dellinger, President of Headbands of Hope, an apparel company that has donated over 600,000 headbands to every children's hospital in the United States and across 19 countries. Lauren has worked with the company since its inception in 2012, first as its Director of Outreach Services before becoming President in 2018. Lauren received a bachelor's degree in child development and family relations from East Carolina University. We have Olivia Zarkin, who is a consultant with Cause Consulting, a leading social impact strategy and communications firm dedicated to helping companies simultaneously strengthen businesses and impact society. She's passionate about the possibilities when companies, employees, and nonprofits work together to create lasting social change. She's committed to creating collective social impact within the corporate sector and empowering employees both within the workplace and the community. Olyvia received a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Maryland and graduated from the University of Pennsylvania's executive program for social impact strategy. And to kick us off, we have Rick Steele, founder and CEO of Agile Mile. Agile Mile provides TDM software and incentives for government programs. Prior to Agile Mile, Rick was the founder, chairman, and CEO of Kinkos.com, which was sold to FedEx. Rick holds a bachelor's and master's degree in naval architecture from the University of Michigan, and his favorite mode of travel is train. Rick, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Casey. Can you all hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, good. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I imagine you're feeling some Zoom fatigue as we continue with Zoom meetings throughout the year. So thank you for being here. Next slide, Casey. Okay, so 2020 was a rough year. And I'm sure you all had the different experiences up and down the line. As 2020 came along, our team sat down and said, what can we do about what's going on right now with the pandemic, with at-risk families, millions of people losing their jobs? We kind of scratched our head and said, kind of what can we do to help out? We want to do more than just write software. So next slide, please. As a company, we've donated in the past to food banks, our local food bank. And we thought, well, the most obvious thing we can do as a company is continue to donate to food banks. But we thought, given the magnitude of the pandemic and how bad things were, we really wanted to work with our partners and our clients to find maybe a better way to do something. So next slide, please. We got together with our clients, our amazing clients across the country, and we said, hey, what can we do together? And together we said, let's make food banks donations in all the local markets. In every market where we operate, we'll make local food bank donations. And we're happy to do that, but there was sort of one part missing, which was, how do we get the commuter/consumer engaged with us so that we can make a community effort to do this? So next slide, please. We thought, why not do something simple where we would engage the commuter to help make this happen? We created a series of events called Caring Commutes. And it was really simple. All the commuters needed to do was use their local program to record telecommutes. Since most of the people were working from home, this was a relatively simple thing to do. And when a telecommute goal was reached, a donation was made to the local food bank. And the telecommute goal and the food bank donation varied depending on whether it was Pennsylvania, Virginia, Florida, Texas, wherever we were working. So we like this idea, and we launched in a series of markets. Next slide, please. And these are the reasons we liked it. First is it did help families in need. It specifically went directly to what we thought were the most needy folks, but it really engaged the commuters. The commuter had to do something to be part of this. But we thought it also helped raise the brand value of our clients' programs. They were now associated not only with helping them get to work, but helping their commute help their community as well. Kind of a double value there. And then, of course, the other thing was capturing valuable telecommute data. For those of you who run TDM programs, yes, we know we promote telecommuting, but a lot of people are logging carpool trips and bike trips, but they didn't dawn on them they could actually log their work from home and get points and incentives for that. So next slide, please. So how did it work? Well, we don't know exactly the definitive outcome, but we can tell you that commuters really got engaged. We set a series of goals in all the markets, and all the goals were exceeded faster than we anticipated. Telecommute activity rose by over 50% compared to the same period last year. So we were pretty excited about that. And kind of the question, we came away from it saying, God, this is kind of neat. Does this work better, worse than traditional incentives, right? I mean, in our TDM industry, we've always felt like we need to give people some sort of bribe to stop driving their car, right? We need to give them a chance to win a prize, a discount, something to win a car. Here we said, you're not going to get anything, you're going to do something for the community. And people responded. And we thought, wow, maybe we've stumbled upon something here that might be an additional way to engage commuters. So I'd like to sort of pose that to the crowd and say, what do we think about how this works? Next slide, please. And the fun part was when this was over, we noticed another transportation company that was donating money to food banks. And of course, Subaru was donating, their number was a little bigger than ours. They donated 50 million meals, but they donated money to people reusing for their causes as well. So we've got a quick poll here. It'd be fun to sort of see what you folks think. We think this is a new idea. And so I'm not here to be a cause marketing speaker or expert in any way, shape, or form. We did just enough to realize what we don't know, and it's the tip of the iceberg. So we were excited to get a panel together of experts, people who have tried this firsthand, people who have helped with other companies. And so I'll step aside and let the experts talk here about some of the specifics. Dan can talk about the specifics of the programs that they ran in Vermont, and Olivia's got a broad-based experience of helping with cause marketing and consulting, and Lauren's company has a cause mission that's built right into their company. So I'll go ahead and turn it over now to Olivia, so you can tell us a little bit, help us get a little bit smarter on the subject of cause marketing. Thanks, Olivia.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rick. Yeah, and thank you also for sharing about the great work that you've been doing and really garnering, your community and the folks that you work with to really do good. Especially now, I feel like that's really the silver lining that we've been seeing. Amongst COVID, the silver lining of people really wanting to help out and do good and make a difference in their communities. So really great to see. So yeah, as Rick stated, so I am from Cause Consulting. We're a social impact strategy and communications firm, and you can just go to the next slide. For over the last 20 years, our teams have really been working with companies on the development of social impact strategies in B2B as well as B2C across a wide range of industries. And we work with companies across all different sectors to really, not only create and activate social impact programs, but create programs that really differentiate brands, create social impact that really makes a difference, as well as really inspire stakeholders to take that action. If you go to the next slide. So here you can just see our quick agenda. As Rick stated, I'm really looking, my role here is really to provide you with a quick overview of what corporate social impact is more generally, how to more broadly, take a look at what's happening in the marketplace, outline key practices and considerations, and then of course, dive into a quick example. So if we go to the next slide, you can see here, there are so many terms that we use today around corporate social impact. There's purpose, there's CSR, which is really, it stands for corporate social responsibility. There's philanthropy, there's cause. And, really all of these words are getting to the same idea of how a company thinks about its role in the larger community and provides value. And you may have heard folks on this call talk about or mention the term cause marketing. And so we really look at cause marketing as a tactic of a corporate social impact strategy. So, if you're an analogy here, if you're thinking about driving a car, you can think about the actual body and engine and structure of the car as, the overall corporate social impact program. But then if you think about how you need something like a road to drive on to get from point A to point B, I think of that road as cause marketing. Cause marketing really acts as a tool for you to then tell your story around your corporate social impact program and all the great work that you're doing. And just for the purposes of today, obviously there are a ton of terms within the space that are used. For purposes of today, I'm going to refer to this programming as corporate social impact. And so if we're looking here at the evolution of corporate social impact, why are there so many terms for the same thing and how did we really get here? Really, the simplified timeline demonstrates the progression of corporate social impact evolving from the pre-1970s, where companies focused on this idea of altruism, really implementing programs because it was a nice thing to do in the community, to being more strategic in the 1990s, really focusing on social and business outcomes separately, to then evolving really to the model that we use now, which is a more engaged and integrated approach where social impact is really incorporated into the business strategy itself. And really, corporate social impact has evolved from this pure PR play to an important part of corporate strategy to not only protect, but to also create value. And so if we move to the next slide, as we think about how we define corporate social impact as it stands today, specifically how we define the social impact program at Cause Consulting, we really think about it as this long-term branded initiative that delivers against business and societal objectives. And we refer to this type of program as a signature program. And so as you'll see some examples in the following slides, you'll likely recognize a few of these name brands. So here, toy company Hasbro, they have this Be Fearless, Be Kind program. And so, that program is really designed to inspire and empower kids to have the empathy and courage to stand up for others and to be inclusive and to make a difference. If we go to the next slide, you can see the makeup brand, Avon's Breast Cancer Promise program. And so, they've been fighting breast cancer and raising awareness for over 25 years, which is truly incredible. If we go to the next slide, you're going to see tech company Adobe and their Youth Voices program. And they're inspiring young people to create social change through the power of digital storytelling. And then if you go to the next slide, you'll see craft beer company Sam Adams and their signature program, Brewing the American Dream. And so their program is really focused around equipping small business owners with critical support to pursue their passions. So again, there are a wide range here of examples that I've shown you across different industries. And really, these companies are doing it differently, focusing on, different cause areas that really are relevant to them and the business and the work. And so if we go to the next slide, so, why now? Why are we seeing corporate social impact take center stage here? And from the next few slides, you'll see the current climate and marketplace are really playing a big role here. And so firstly, CEOs and Wall Street, we're really seeing them step up. The financial community is really holding great importance on purpose and profit. And, I can give you an example, the Business Roundtable, which I don't know if, all of you are aware of that group, but they're essentially CEOs from major US companies. They declared that companies should really not exist to just serve their shareholders, but to also deliver value to their stakeholders by doing things like investing in their employees and their customers, dealing fairly with suppliers, supporting the communities where they operate. Larry Fink, who's the CEO of BlackRock, also released a letter in 2020 to company executives, highlighting the importance of embracing a strong sense of purpose and a commitment to stakeholders. So really, highlighting this idea of purpose existing at the core of a company's strategy. And so we're seeing that really becoming more and more important. And then we're also seeing environmental, social, and governance practices, what we call in the space ESG. We're really seeing environmental, social, and governance really become a priority for the investor community specifically. And really the S, the social of ESG, the social impact side really being, one of the most important ESG priorities for investors as well. And then simultaneously, we're really seeing CEOs speak out and take action. So over the last year, of course, we saw companies who were supporting voting rights and getting out the vote and getting people to register to vote. We saw them make statements condemning racism. We saw them really care for communities struggling with COVID-19. And so if you go to the next slide, we're also seeing, stakeholders are really having increased expectations of the role brands and companies play. So whether you're an employee, whether you're an investor, a consumer, a competitor, you have expectations around the role that companies play from a social impact context. And if you go to the next slide, COVID-19 and, the Black Lives Matter movement, of course, has also really made us more aware of the inequities many people in our country face. The gap has certainly widened in the US between really financially healthy and vulnerable populations because of COVID-19. And, specifically as the world really switched to remote learning, COVID, has also really shown us how great the digital divide really is in underserved populations specifically. We saw the private sector, they've taken on a role of really raising awareness around the virus and helping to vaccinate in the US, focusing on helping essential workers, manufacturing masks and hand sanitizers in their factories where they typically manufacture things like clothing and alcohol. And then specifically thinking about the Black Lives Matter movement, executives are really facing pressure to, make quick decisions and to take action. So when we saw companies quickly issue statements of support to Black communities after George Floyd's death, we also saw a lot of the public express that these, statements of support were not necessarily enough. 82% of US consumers actually said that these communications really needed to be followed by decisive steps and, decisive action. And so we're really seeing companies move from more of these performative acts to more of these substantive and impactful acts. And then with this, there's also been a huge focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion among businesses. Really, we're seeing significant resources from companies being used to create this new community-focused DE&I programming. Next slide, please. And so through all of this, we know that consumers, really want and expect purpose, and this expectation has really been heightened as the pandemic continues. So, here we're seeing 71% of consumers, they really believe that the pandemic, will force companies to act more responsibly in the long term, which is great. I think that's a silver lining, with COVID and everything that's going on. We're also seeing 63% of Americans expect that companies, will continue their progress and their commitments around social and environmental issues. And 60% of millennials, just more generally said that, the reason why that they, that they're in the jobs that they're in now is because they feel like they have a sense of purpose. Next slide, please. And so as a business, how do you take that next step? So when you think about this engaged and integrated approach to corporate social impact, really looking at these 6 steps, we really think that they're a great way to start thinking about and framing and really creating your program and then marketing those efforts. There's no one size fits all approach, of course, but these elements will really allow you to think about what works best for your company based on your priorities and your goals. And so with that, there are also certain questions that you should be asking yourself at each of these stages. So if we look at the first one, align with your purpose, brand, and business priorities. So the questions I would really ask myself here as I'm getting started is, what do you stand for as a company? What do you do best? And so really this step is really about figuring out where purpose and brand and business all intersect so that your company can really find the right cause area and the right niche for them. And a part of this work, which I think is really important, is also about doing some digging to understand what your stakeholders really care about as well, because they're an important part of this. The next one here, identify your company's goals. So, sorry, you can stay on that slide previously. But thinking about, which of your business goals can social impact efforts deliver around? What current data can you gather to inform social impact strategy? And so again, this step is really about thinking about the intersection of business and social impact and where, they can really work together. So if your business priority is really to create a competitive edge in the market or to attract and retain top talent, really thinking strategically about how your social impact program can genuinely serve those business goals. The third one here, become a deeper expert in your social issue arena. So, where do you go to learn about your specific social issue? We're not all experts, around the issues of, those experiencing homelessness, for example, or those who, or environmental issues. Like we're not all expected to be experts here, but I think as a part of this work, it's really important to learn about your specific social issue as a company, so that you can really get smarter and really also do the research to then inform who should you be choosing as your beneficiary, who should you be supporting in the community. And so this is really an opportunity to strategically think about and design for the population that you'll be helping with your program. The fourth one here, really getting to know your beneficiaries and community. This one's really important, thinking about how can you better empathize with your beneficiaries, and what do you bring to your strategy table? So of course, you're not necessarily an expert in this specific issue area, but if you're designing a program, for example, for disabled veterans, you're likely going to want someone from that community or an expert in the space to really give you their perspective and share their experiences with you, so that you can really make sure you're designing this program with them in mind, because you're really looking to help that community and you want them to be able to, to really feel like your program is helping them and to really feel that your program was created authentically for them. The next one here, articulate your unique positioning. So, where can your company have the greatest impact? So thinking through how can you get from point A to point B to ultimately achieve that impact? So, what resources do you have as a company that can really help you in that unique positioning? And then how can you message this positioning to inspire collaboration and action? For me, this is really about articulating what makes this program different, why this program is important, and why your stakeholders should ultimately care. And then lastly, tell authentic stories of impact. So thinking about, how do you share what you're learning in an authentic way? If it makes sense, how do you get your stakeholders actively involved and inspire them to take action? Do you have personal human stories to make sure, that your work is relevant to your audiences and that it's tangible? And then thinking to the future, how can your company really lead and advance the issue? So, I think this step is really where the cause marketing piece comes in. This is where you're drawing in and educating your stakeholder groups around the program and the impactful work that you're doing. And if we go to the next slide, so just giving you a quick example on how all of these elements really come together to form a corporate social impact program. If you go to the next slide, you can see here, so Cause Consulting worked with Sam Adams for over 10 years and helped them to create this signature program, Brewing the American Dream. And so this program was based on the idea of, really helping small businesses pursue their passions, specifically those in the food and beverage and the hospitality industry. And so this was really at the heart of founder Jim Koch's story. He created the beer company from his kitchen in 1984. So, this small business mentality had really always been at the heart of the company. And so in thinking about and doing a ton of issue area research around what the reality was like for small business owners in today's world, we got smarter and we really found that small business owners, they had limited business skills in some cases. They didn't necessarily know where to turn to for resources that were available to them. And they had constrained access to capital. They were often turned away by those more traditional banks because they were viewed as being too risky. And so this really allowed us to understand the population that we wanted to serve, and ultimately which gaps the Sam Adam program could truly address. And so in this case, we decided, we could really make an impact by providing small business owners with the training and the tools and the resources that they needed to accelerate their small business journey. And so in partnership with Axion, which is the national nonprofit small business lender, we actually worked with them, and now the program is has been around for years and years, and they now provide a suite of resources that these small businesses can leverage to be successful in getting their businesses off the ground. So that includes things like access to loans, free financial advice, coaching and mentoring in areas like social media, HR, sales. And you can go to the next slide. And so as you can see, they've really made an incredible impact among small businesses since the program's inception. 11,000 entrepreneurs coached, 44 million in food and beverage loans, 9,000 jobs retained and created, 38 states participated. So, they're doing incredible work here. And it was really a need that they were solving for. And then if we go to the next slide here, is there time?
I think we're kind of running a little tight. I think we'll just let folks
Okay.
know that there is a video to watch of this. And Olivia, you can also share the link in the chat after, and we'll have it up on the recording so people can view it.
Yeah, perfect. Basically, this is just a quick example of cause marketing from this specific program. And this really highlighted this one entrepreneur's experience within the program. But I'll definitely send that afterwards.
Great.
Great. So that's really it. I'm going to pass it off to Lauren from Headbands of Hope. Thank you guys for listening.
I think you're muted there, Lauren.
Oh,
There
yeah,
you
sorry.
go.
I was waiting for the PowerPoint to come up.
Yep.
Hey guys, I am Lauren from Headbands of Hope. What we do is we sell headwear, headbands, and hair accessories to women and children and men. And for every one purchased, we donate one to a child battling an illness. On the next slide, you'll see how Headbands of Hope started. So it was actually started by my college roommate. We went to NC State for our freshman year. I graduated from ECU, but went to NC State where that's where Jess graduated. And she did an internship for Make-A-Wish Foundation. And during her internship, she found that when children would lose their hair to chemotherapy, that headbands were a great way for them to keep their feminine identity, and they weren't as hot as expensive as wigs. So she always knew she wanted to start her own business, but this was kind of where her, the light bulb went off in her head, and she was like, well, I want to start my own business, but I want to do something that gives back. So we started in 2012, and I kind of started as just a friend helping a friend out. And then since then, we have donated over 850,000 headbands, as you'll see on the next slide, to every children's hospital in the United States and in 21 different countries, which I know that's a little updated from what the introduction was. So, as Olivia mentioned, talking about these corporate businesses, giving back in a way, we kind of started the opposite. We're not corporate, and not yet at least, but maybe one day. We're still considered a small business, but we started wanting to make a difference. If you were to take out the cause of what we do, and if you were to take out our mission, we would just be a headband company. You can buy a headband anywhere, but we have found ever since starting Headbands of Hope that our generation and older generations now, they're willing to spend $1 or $2 extra on a product that gives back, that tells a story, not just because it tells a story, and not just because it gives back, because it also is a conversation starter. We have a direct consumer website, which is headbandsofhope.com. And then we also have another platform that we have wholesale customers purchase. We have right around, I think, 2,000 stores, just mom and pop boutiques across the United States that carry our headbands. So we have stuff from athletic wear to baby to bridal and couture to everyday wear. So we, really can hit all the demographics with that. That's something, when you started a small business, you're in different avenues and trying to figure out what you want your niche to be. For so long, we wanted our niche to be like a certain type of product. Like we want to be known as the Tom shoes of headbands. That was like always what we wanted to do. But, as we've grown, we also don't want to leave anybody out. We want everybody to, know about Headbands of Hope. So, as a small business, we are still trying to get there as far as merchandising goes. And how do we see somebody walk down the street and like, oh, that is Headbands of Hope, but it's part of, learning as a small business and growing there. When COVID hit last year, it was very scary for us, as I'm sure it was for, the rest of the world and everybody else out there, regardless of what profession you were in. I think we, as a small business, my boss called me, our Jess, the CEO, and we have a team of about 6 girls underneath us. And we were just like, okay, we have to make sure everybody feels secure and know that like their jobs are not going anywhere, regardless of what is about to happen. And the main reason that we really got nervous was because at that time, a lot of our sales were coming directly from wholesale. And so all these mom and pop stores were closing and all of our trade shows were getting canceled. So we were like, well, what are we going to do with this revenue that will no longer be coming in? And so instead of, getting in that panic mode, we pivoted and we decided to make a difference and kind of conform with what was going on in society. So we announced in May of 2020, or in April of 2020 going into May, that instead of donating headbands, we stopped the manufacturing of headbands. And for every item purchased, we donated a surgical face mask. So we donated over 60,000 surgical face masks, and 10,000 of those were with Zappos. So being able to work with bigger corporate companies to make a difference too has really made an impact with what we do. Not only just being able to make that extra donation, but also be able to market us and get out there in front of other people. And when we talk about cause marketing, it's really making the consumer feel a part of the cause. I know that we did a poll after Rick's presentation, and I saw that they said local charity was what won there. And being able to really, because the consumer wants to know what they're doing and what they're purchasing is truly making a difference. So on the next slide, something that we put on our website is our giving gallery, and something that we do on all of our social media sites, and even our hang tag is we always provide them with pictures of the children that we've donated to. And then also here you'll see a nurse, where we actually, now we sell button headbands, but at first we were literally gluing headbands or buttons on headbands when that was first a thing. So we were, gluing and sewing and trying, pricking our fingers with needles, trying to figure it out. But we know we bring the consumer along the journey with us. On the next slide, you'll see that this is our donation confirmation email. So when someone comes to our website and makes a purchase, after 30 days, they are going to receive an email saying exactly where that donation went to. So we keep a list of who we are, we keep a list of the hospitals that we're donating to, and then that way we interchange that here. And it's really cool, we also allow people to like nominate hospitals where they can receive a donation, or we have, we'll feature 4 times a year, we feature a headband hero. And so what that means is local to wherever city, for 48 hours, we donate back 20% of our sales to help medical costs just for that particular child. So, really just getting the consumer to feel a part of the cause and let them walk this stage of life with you is what we've been seeing to be the most successful for the marketing aspect. And then on the following slide, this is just kind of, showing the larger picture of places that we've worked with, and to be honest, it wasn't at first, we were on the Today Show, but it wasn't because of we had a beautiful hair product. We were on the Today Show as our first, big thing because they loved what we were doing. They loved that we were giving back, and just being a part of the mission in general. So, as we wrap up with calls marketing, and before I pass this off to Dan, I just think if you get anything out of the webinar is making the consumer feel as they are walking the journey with you and really being a part of that calls is what leads to success. So Dan, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Lauren. That was great. A second while there we go. Thanks so much for having me. Dan Courier with the Go Vermont program, Agency of Transportation. I'm just going to continue these presentations by talking about the Caring Commutes campaign that we ran in partnership with Agile Mile. Next slide, please. I want to start off with some background, Go Vermont and everything, and as well as, the pandemic and how it impacted our marketing. Just to say, Go Vermont's vision is to connect more people with more places so they can reach the destinations with the modes that they choose. Next slide. And so, Go Vermont, we host a wide range of tools and resources. And really it's out to help people with their mobility needs. Tools like our trip planner, our local inner city bus schedules, carpool matching services, plus our call center, they're all there as resources. And, and so much of our marketing, was really focused on Vermonters who drive alone, trying to get them out of their cars and try a new mode. And we were having, pretty good, mode shift, 3 to 5% each year. People using carpooling, van pooling, or trying public transit, all of it being recorded through the Agile Mile platform. And then, we have to say, along came, COVID-19, the pandemic. And that mode, that shift was just like immediate here in Vermont, where people went from going to work, driving their car, to immediately working from home, which caused us at Go Vermont to immediately put on hold like all of our marketing campaigns. It's like, it wasn't like, it just made me feel really uncomfortable to even talk about carpooling, van pooling, or anything like that. And so, Casey, next slide. And for Vermont, it happened really fast, right? From March 13th to March, 24th of 2020, we really went from a state of emergency, to help, really address the pandemic, to everyone being ordered home by the state of Vermont and the governor issuing his stay at home and stay safe executive order, which really meant that if you didn't have to go to work as an essential employee, you needed to work from home. And then travel was even more reduced. Really, they only wanted essential services for trips to be occurring. And so public transit was way down, carpooling was way down. All those modes that, before the pandemic was like, our key, outreach and marketing. Right? We were talking about carpooling all the time. We're talking about using public transit, and that just wasn't happening during the pandemic. We really found ourselves steering towards the idea of expanding the telecommute. So next slide. And so, where we wanted to, talk about this messaging, and Casey, one more click, please. So Vermont, we didn't want to at all, right? There was no bus, there was no volunteer driver promotion. We didn't want to do any van pooling. There was no carpooling, but really we were trying to find a way to stay relevant as we started discussing and thinking internally. And how do we still communicate with our users during the pandemic? And how do we also use our strong base of users, with inside the Agile Mile, app, with those that are going to go Vermont? And we've got a lot of resources developed. We've got a lot of marketing, talent. And how can we refocus this to help meet the flavor of the day? What is the new normal for us? And so, Casey, next slide. So Go Vermont, we changed everything in oh my goodness, it must have been like 2 or 3 days, to be honest. The entire website had a new banner put up almost immediately. And then we started really focusing on, people working from home, that remote workforce, the telecommuting. And at the same time, Agile Mile came to us, right? And it just is one of those moments where it's just like, oh, this really matches well. Agile Mile looking to help serve the communities, as Rick kind of mentioned in the beginning, and then also engage members at the same time. And I think that was a great connection for me right away. It's like, oh, we just didn't want to help support our members to use the tools without offering a benefit. And this was honestly my first introduction to cause marketing. And at first I'm just like, I don't know, can I think about this? And with some discussion with Rick, and talking internally with the Go Vermont program, we really came to a conclusion that this is something to try. We really were willing to test the waters, so to speak, with our first campaign. And so, Casey, next slide. And so this graphic you'll see a lot. It's the stock graphic that they like to use for any caring commutes. But really, the concept was really basic. We really enjoyed the idea, right? Okay, people are working from home. Can we encourage them to go into the platform, record 500 trips? After 500 trips are recorded, a donation of $500 would go to the Vermont Food Bank. And you saw the Feeding America slide in the beginning with the Vermont Food Bank listed there. And so they're a member of that group. But also, in Vermont, it became quickly apparent that food insecurity, access to food, and even distribution of food was going to be one of those really, really impacted items from the pandemic. And so, Casey, next slide. And so, University of Vermont, I love those university guys, right? Because, they'll do the research for you and all you got to do is report out on it. And so they did some great work right in the beginning, and they quickly found, that, by the time June of 2020 was coming around, really 1 in 4 Vermonters was food insecure. And that trips to the food bank for emergency food had really increased in Vermont by 68%. These are huge numbers, and numbers we hadn't seen since the Great Recession. And so it really was times that we were just wondering, like, how can we do more, right? We really need to focus, right? And so when Rick proposed, the cause, marketing campaign around the caring commutes, I really kind of connected the dots and said, yes, food, Vermont Food Bank, telecommuting, all of this seems to really make sense. And so we said yes, and we stepped forward into our first campaign. And so next slide, Casey. And so the first campaign ran in May of 2020. So even before those numbers came out, we were already seeing an increase in the need for food to be received and distributed. And so so the first campaign ran, was focused in the month of May. We really had no idea how it would be received, and very pleasantly surprised. It had a great reception by the users through Go Vermont. We saw an immediate increase in the telecommutes being recorded. So that was increased by 79% over the previous month. And then we had a 119% increase compared to the same quarter before. And so huge increases, and so where before it had always been in our reports, carpooling and using the public transit vehicles, we suddenly saw a huge increase on our graphs for teleworking. And this is definitely one of those items that help to get these trips recorded. And so with these results, we were very encouraged, that one, it was reinforcing to us that one, we had picked the right mode for people to be interested in recording trips around, and then the organization to donate to. And so I think that plays a lot into the cause marketing. And by no means am I, a marketing expert, but I do just say, it just seems like in my mind, this makes a lot of sense. And so next slide, Casey. And so our second campaign, started to, we finished the first and we immediately said, hey, this worked. Let's do a second one. And what do we want it to be? When do we want it to run? And so we decided to have an increase in the trips and an increase in the donation. We're going to still stay with the Vermont Food Bank. But we're going to identify the month of November as the key month for the second campaign. And honestly, I picked November for a reason. Vermont always has a big push for food donations around Thanksgiving. And so it really seemed to match well to the campaign. People were still working from home and seeing if we can get another increase in users for the site. And so I do want to mention, the first campaign really relied on Agile Mile in Vermont, right, to sort of cover the cost and manage. We did bring in new partners for this second campaign, including, our TMA partners in the Upper Valley in Vermont, which is Vital Communities, as well as the co-op food stores, and then the Agile Mile in Vermont, all sharing the cost. And like the first campaign, we saw another increase, another positive response, 49% increase in telecommutes being recorded over the previous month, and an overall 20% increase from the previous quarter. So another great bump, another improvement, and really encouraging to see that this marketing does have a positive influence on Vermonters, on the Agile Mile, recording the trips. And so next slide, Casey. And so I just want to, highlight some of my takeaways, from the cause marketing side and where we'll be going next with it. And so, really both campaigns were successful based on the metrics that we had set out. And it did increase our users. And it even increased our users long after the campaigns have stopped running. And so people continued to document their trips. And that was an added benefit, right? So during the campaign, we had a bump, but we had continuous improvement over the year. And I like to think of success as when opportunity meets preparation. And in this case, we really did have both, right? People being sent home because of the executive orders in Vermont. The need for additional food through the food banks. I think all of that really played into making a real success in this marketing campaign. And so with that correct messaging and the correct organization, it was a win for Vermont. And so, I just want to mention, need has always existed and it will exist long after the pandemic. And Vermonters have a strong appetite for giving. And I think that's another key thing here. We, and because, we have this appetite for giving, this type of marketing is successful in Vermont. And you see it in other places. Vermont Public Radio comes to mind as another, really that they focus on, the cause. And then, because we saw, with Go Vermont, overall, we saw a 13% increase in active members, and then an additional increase of 22% for participation due to this marketing. it's our intention to continue with the caring commutes, for, the foreseeable future, running them yearly, likely in November, to match with that Thanksgiving timeframe. And then because the number of telecommutes had increased so much, in fact, they'd increased by 177%, it's our intention at Go Vermont to continue to use cause marketing in our other marketing campaigns that we do across the state. And that is me, and thank you so much.
I want to thank all of our panelists today for a really great presentation and shining a light on this important topic. And thank you to Agile Mile for sponsoring that. I know we only have a few minutes left here. We're going to try to get to a couple questions. Do know that I do have everyone's contact information up here. If we don't get your question answered at the end, please feel free to reach out to any of our panelists today, and they'll be glad to answer your question. First couple questions that have come up, and Olivia, I'll have you start, has to do with B Corp organizations. Someone had wrote that they recently were part of a leadership program, and they had discussed this relatively new option for companies to be classified as an official B Corp organization. And they had seen this with a lot of bigger companies like Patagonia, but do you think something like this will come to smaller organizations? And how do you think these B Corp organizations fit into cause marketing?
Yeah, so go ahead.
I was going to say that's something we're looking into right now, into doing that ourselves. I love the idea of a B corporation, sort of codifying what you believe in as a corporation and making it part of what you stand for. But we're just getting started on the process. But Olivia, you probably know a lot of B corporations, so could speak better to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ones that I know specifically in the New York area where I'm based, they're all fairly small organizations. I think when you're looking at the community of B Corps, I think it's sort of rare to see those bigger ones like a Patagonia. I know Dannon, the yogurt brand, actually just became B Corp certified, and that was a huge deal because they're a huge company. Typically, I would say companies that are already public don't necessarily want to take on all of the extra work that it becomes to be a B Corp, because there are a lot of legal and financial hoops that you'd sort of have to jump through. So in my experience, I think it is more so common for B Corps to be on the smaller to medium side of the company.
A question just came up too, and maybe if anyone wants to chime in, just kind of maybe real quickly saying what is a B Corp, just so that people know what that is.
The B stands for social benefit, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw you were on mute, Rick.
Yeah.
There's certain things you have to do to qualify as social benefit. Like you have to have a certain amount of, you have to pay your employees a certain way. There's a whole bunch of things you need to just sort of codify that you behave in a certain way. And I think there's also a spread between the lowest and the highest paid person. So you don't have one person making 450 times what the lowest person makes. And I think there's sort of a built-in spread there. So it creates more equity across the board, across employees. This is all really new to me. I'm just getting involved in it now, but I know it stands for Social Benefit Corporation. I don't know exactly all the type of rules that it involves.
And it basically, you're thinking about social impact from, throughout your entire company. So it has to do with your workers, the community, and your role in the community and your role in the environment, and how you treat your employees and your customers, your governance practices. So it's really, when you take on that B certification, that B Corp certification, it's really a stamp saying, you are a company that has been vetted and approved, and you're really balancing business and more of like that social impact work.
Okay. We'll try to get to one more in here. I know we're hitting the top of the hour, and I appreciate everyone bearing with me, folks, here. Rick, I'll start with you on this one here because it's kind of directed to you. Someone had written that Agile Mile, they noticed that Agile Mile now allows a monthly winner to select to donate their gift card award to a nonprofit organization. Any data on how often that is selected? And do you think it would be great for TDM programs to highlight this feature to commuters?
I'm going to ask Kelly to chime in on this. Kelly, have you looked at the data on that yet for people using Tango and whether they're using the donation aspect?
Yes, I'll admit, so we have access to the data, but we haven't actually delved into it because we've been using that for a few months now, but we definitely something to look into to see how often folks are actually utilizing that as an option to donate their winnings.
And I'm guessing now that we got the question, we'll probably look into it right away.
Yes, we will.
There you go. Well, we've already gone over the top of the hour, and I apologize. We did not get to everyone's questions today. But once again, I do have all the information up for each presenter here. Please feel free to reach out to them. I know there were some more questions here. Everyone be happy to participate. I want to thank Agile Mile once again for bringing this topic to the forefront, presenting it to our TDM community and making it a worthwhile issue for everyone to think about. I also want to thank all of our presenters today, Olivia, Lauren, and Dan, for a job well done, and appreciate all the work you're doing in this field. It is fabulous and great to see. I want to thank all of you who joined us as well today for this webinar. And keep in mind, we do have our Future of Commuting Summit coming up at the end of the month, so please feel free to register for that in the next couple of weeks. And our next webinar will be Thursday, May 13th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, so be on the lookout for that. Registration will be opening up next week. Once again, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate you being on the line, and take care and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. Thanks, Olivia. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Dan.
Thank
you
you.
all. Have a
Thank
good
you
day.
all.